Hey Gunther, I hear you like to bark a lot. In this video, we're going to go over how you can get your dog to not bark so much. Now, this is a Schnauzer, a miniature Schnauzer, kind of black and white, kind of more of a gray and white, but I grew up with Schnauzers, and they were salt and pepper, and boy, can they bark. My parents' dog actually could set off the alarm in the house because the bark pitch matched the same resonance frequency as breaking glass. So these guys are a big barker. That's how they alert. That's part of one of the breed characteristics. So if you have a dog that barks a lot of people yell at the dog and get chastise the dog. Well, for dogs, any attention itself is validated. And so if I bark and the humans yell at me, well, usually the dog thinks, cool, now we're both barking. Or look, he agrees with me. He's also barking at you. Now, for about 10% of dogs, if the dog's barking at something and you say, thanks, buddy, or just acknowledge it, they'll stop barking. Only about 10% of dogs, but there are dogs out there that do that. So if your dog's barking, instead of getting mad, try to come over with thanks. Finally, somebody's listening to me. Okay, now we also want to figure out why the dog is barking. Sometimes there's a reason for dogs to bark. A lot of people punish their dogs when they bark. Now, I am a force-free, positive reinforcement-only person. Dogs don't really learn very well through punitive measures, and they learn about 70% faster through positive reinforcement. But if the dog barks and I chastise and punish it, after a while, you can break the dog of barking. The dog's like, okay, I won't bark. Peeping Tom? You don't want me to bark. House on fire? You don't want me to bark. Or instead of barking to alert you, I might just go bite someone. I'm not going to give a warning. I'm just going to go straight to the next step. So basically what we want to do is, first of all, acknowledge or understand why the dog is barking. Sometimes it's appropriate for dogs to bark. Now for me, up to 3 barks is okay. After 3 barks, you're kind of overindulging. So now there's a couple things you can do if your dog's barking. If your dog's barking at something outside and you yell at your dog, well, burning energy matters to dogs. So if I'm not willing to go over and correct my dog, then I really don't mean it if I'm just yelling from the door. And again, if he's in that worked up state of mind, not again, but if he's in a really worked up state of mind, he's not going to listen to me. So I usually give a command once, 3 times maximum, and then I would go get the dog, and I would do it in a very casual manner. A lot of people would run over, storm over the dog. The dog's like, it doesn't look good, and then they start squirting away. And then we teach our dog to run away from us. We break our trust a little bit, and our energy and our body language does not say we want to do it. So what I would do is when your dog's barking, even though this seems really counterintuitive, and this is counterintuitive to a lot of stuff that I go over, I would have a treat, one of the good value treats that I have, walk out there when he's barking, go over there, and put it in front of his nose. Now, if you give him the treat while he's barking, that's rewarding that. But a dog's nose controls 60% of their brain. If I can get one of these treats out of my pocket. So I can bypass. So now he's paying attention to me instead of whatever the other thing was. Once I got at least 3 seconds, I would tell him to sit. When he sits, put it in his mouth and say the word sit. And then I would attach the leash to his collar or pick him up and then bring him in. When you pick him up, don't snatch him. Just do it gently. So every once in a while they come over, they end up giving me a treat, so I don't need to run away from them. Their body language doesn't tell me they're upset, and I'm comfortable doing that. Now, I still go inside, and it's a bit of a buzzkill because I was really having fun yelling at the squirrel, but at least we're making it more of a positive association. One of my best things to do, though, is tell the dog to be quiet, but we have to first translate how to be quiet. So now dogs learn, excuse me, buddy, I'm sorry about that. I forgot, this is the first time he's been on my lap. So sometimes there are different triggers that can get a dog to bark. Dogs learn through association. I always tell my clients you have 3 seconds to correct or reward the dog for them to have the ability to make the connection. Now, one of the things I tell my clients to do is something called passive training, which is waiting for the dog to organically offer a behavior and marking it within 3 seconds and rewarding it. So every time the dog comes to you, pet it and say, come. Every time it sits next to you, pet it and say, sit. So you just, after a while, the dogs will offer those behaviors a little bit more. Well, in this case, we want them to bark. So if somebody comes by, UPS comes by, he barks, say speak, or woofs, or whatever the word is that you want to make his command word to speak. And people are watching this going, I don't want my dog to bark, he barks too damn much, I want him to shut up. Well, first we have to describe and create the definition for on versus before we can do off. So as soon as he barks, say speak. And he barks again, say speak again, or woof, or whatever it is. After you've done that enough, you'll be able to say speak, and the dog will speak. Once the dog has that, the next step is you want to teach him to not speak. Now I'm going to see, first of all, if I can get the dog to speak. I have a squeaker toy. Sometimes you can use squeakers. Nope, not going to work. All right, so I'm going to use my backup plan. If I can find a place to do it. Who's here? Speak! 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 Who's here? Who's here? Who's here? Speak! who's here? Who's here? So I'm not getting a good response from him, but normally if there's somebody at the door or something like that, he's going to speak. So the idea is when he speaks, so let's say he barked, I would give him the treat after and say, speak. Then I would say, silence. You're not being silent. Silence. Silence. You're still not being silent. That sounds like a fart. So the idea is when we get it to speak on command, it speaks, and we give it a treat, and we reward it for speaking. Then we say silence or quiet or hush or whatever the word is that you want to assume. Make it a fun word. So a fun word for maybe cállate, which is Spanish for shut up. So basically you say cállate, and the dog doesn't know what that means. But it's going to sit there silently because it doesn't know what I mean. And then I give it a treat and say cállate again. So when a dog knows a command, typically I say it twice. I say sit, and then when the dog sits, I pet it and say sit. So once during the command stage, once during the reward stage. In this case, we're going to the dog doesn't know how to do it. So the dog sits or speaks, we give it the treat and say speak. Well, we give it the command first. And then say silent. Now in this one, the dog doesn't know silent. So you could actually skip that second part now that I think about it. So sit, okay. Speak, bark, speak. Silent. So just wait for 1 second, give it the treat and say silent. Then go back to bark. Speak, it barks, you give it the treat and say speak. Now silent. And keep on practicing it 1 second, maybe 5 or 6 times in a row. And the next time try to do it for 2 seconds before you give them the treat. Then 3 seconds. And gradually you're going to elongate what it is. But now you can say speak and it speaks and it gets the treat, and you say silence and it doesn't do anything, it gets the treat. After a while it starts to figure out speak means to bark and silence means to not bark. So then when your dog is barking, you have now defined the term and you can say silence or quiet or hush or cállate, and the dog will, it will not all the time listen to you. It also depends on what's going on. If the dog is having a great time and the squirrel is yelling at a squirrel and the squirrel's in the tree and I'm right next to the tree and you're 25 yards away at the house and you're saying cállate, well, in the house, you're a perfect 10 to your dog. Outside, when there's a squirrel 2 feet away, the squirrel is a perfect 10, you're like a 3. So if you just keep on yelling at the dog, it's like, whatever, I got my perfect 10 right here, I'm not interested in you, I might not even hear you. So that's why at the beginning of this video, I talked about going over getting the dog used to coming to you. Now, one last little tip, if your dog barks when it's outside, which is one of the things that he does. Now, he's barking, demand barking, because he wants to play with the other dogs. Does he demand bark at you guys when he wants things?
Yes.
Okay, so you can't even look at your dog. If you even just look at the dog, it's working! Bark more, bark harder! So I had one client, and she actually had an illness, but her dog, and while she was going through the illness, the dog was barking. It was really stressing her out, which was not helping her health. She had a wonderful boyfriend. He went and bought her noise-canceling headphones. She plugged in a thing where she could listen to TV. She said she just sat there. Within a week, the dog stopped barking. So it would just start barking like crazy because I didn't even blink. I didn't hear it. I'm just watching TV. So if your dog barks and you don't yell at it, don't even look at it, don't shush it, ignore it completely. Now, a lot of times we can also put our dogs in position to succeed by exercising them properly. A lot of times dogs bark. They're just, out of balance. They're just got too much stuff going on. Now, going back to the yard, what I was about to conclude, if you are not used to calling your dog in from outside, a lot of times the only time we call our dog is when we're calling them in because they're being a nuisance. Well, coming in actually represents the end of fun. So what I would do instead is every once in a while your dog's outside, it's not barking, not doing anything problematic, go outside, open your door, have a treat, and I usually use this flat hand like this. Gunther, come. And start lowering it. If the dog doesn't come to you, the lower you go, the more it's for the dog. When it comes to you, come, or throw it in your house. He gets it, and you say come, or whatever the word is. I know I promised to give you one, didn't I? And then let him sit. Sit. Bastard, you still got more than me. But basically what we want to do is condition the dog to come to us, and then we want to do it when there's nothing else going on. So we let them come to us, we give them a treat, and then they go out and play. Or we let them, and we toss the treat inside. They come in the house, get the treat, we say come when they lick it up. Anytime you give a treat, they should hear the command word after the treat goes in their mouth. And then they get to go back outside. So now when you ask me to come, it doesn't always represent the end of fun or the end of playtime. Also, a lot of dogs will just come and check in with you from time to time. Whatever it does, that's a great way. This is really more reinforce the come. But if every time your dog checks in, you pet it and say come or give it a treat, well, you're acknowledging coming to me gets a reward. And then after a while, the dog is more inclined to do that. And then when it is barking, your odds of getting it to come to you are going to be a lot higher. Even though that's not related to barking, it is related to helping you stopping the barking. So next time your dog barks, come up with a command word and say woofsies or whatever it is every time he barks, and keep on doing that until you can say woofsies and he barks on command. Now, one last little tidbit. This is a funny story I was going to tell off camera. I'll just tell it on camera. I have a dog, and when we see a squirrel in the backyard, I say alert. And my dogs bark like crazy and run out the dog door to go, because that means that there's a squirrel. So to them, alert means squirrel. Well, I work in Los Angeles a lot, and I have a lot of clients who are single women, and they get a dog kind of for some protection. And a lot of these dogs wouldn't protect them. They're just a happy-go-lucky dog, and that's what we kind of want. But if every time you see a squirrel, you say protect. Well, then, I actually had a client, and her husband, they got divorced. Her husband turned out to be gay and took the dogs, and she ended up getting a new dog, but she couldn't run with that dog. And she was now a little bit thicker than she wanted to be, so she was running a lot to try to lose weight. And she was borrowing one of my dogs to pace her. Well, and she was doing it late at night because it's so hot here, and she said, I'm feeling vulnerable. I'm on a trail. Guys come up to me. There's nobody around. I realize I'm kind of at a disadvantage. If something happens, I don't have anything to do. I said, well, next time that happens, just say alert. And she came back the next day, next time, and she had like mascara running down her face. I thought something really bad. I'm like, well, are you okay? And she's like, oh my God, it was so funny. It's like, what happened? She goes, this guy came up to me and she goes, I think he was just trying to be clever because he said, hey, baby, you look hot. And she goes, I'm sweating like a pig. I do not look hot. And but then she goes, what threw me is he had his hands inside his biker shorts. He was going like this. And she goes, I got the impression he was going to flash me. That's my first thought. She goes, in retrospect, I think he was just trying to air himself out, or it was cutting into his waist or whatever. But she goes, I didn't think about it. I just said alert. She goes, your dog lost its stuff. And this guy should have been wearing brown shorts. He couldn't turn around he could not run away fast enough. What does alert mean? And I told her alert means squirrel. So if you have a dog that barks a lot, when the guardian was mentioned, sometimes you have guests over, you want the dog to bark to get him away. Well, you might want to come up. These are not guard dogs, they're not attack dogs, but if we can create a command word that means protect or alert or whatever it means, security, and then the dog starts barking, that could be kind of a funny thing to do as well. Okay, so these are some tips and tricks that you can use to stop a dog from barking.